And we are live right here on the Tony Cotillo Show, a little remote version right here, talking a little Philadelphia Phillies. Like we always talk, exclusive interviews, get the insiders on, get the stories we want to talk about. Happy 2025. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. The show, the station, the YouTube channel. We're live everywhere. Wherever you're at socially, just hit Tony Cotillo Show and boom, you'll be able to find us. But one of the most interesting stories in the offseason was what were the Philadelphia Phillies going to do? Were they going to go after Juan Soto? Were they going to choose the big star? What were they going to do? And honestly, I think it was pretty quiet. You know, we went a different route. We go after pitching. And, you know, we have talked about this. You see my man Jimmy Mack on screen. We're going to bring him in a second. We talked about this at Pike's Pub. We talked about what they were going to do. But what was left? What was going to happen if the guys they targeted didn't kind of fall into their lap? And now we see it. Are we revitalizing the five aces again? Are we going to have the best rotation of baseball? Is it enough? Jim, happy New Year, brother. Bring you in as always. My man Jimmy Mack, insider for the Tony Cotillo Show. Man, was this a kick to the gut a little bit, or were you not surprised?
So I was a little surprised because, you know, there was a lot of talk. Middleton brought in 3 new minority investors. They were going to inject additional funding into the team. You know, Juan Soto was the big prize out there. There's a bunch of other guys that were exciting and could add to the roster and really give them a chance to compete and maybe get in an arms race with the Dodgers. And that's not what happened. The Dodgers did their part, but the Phillies it's been kind of lukewarm. Not bad moves. You know, I think Luzardo trade was awesome. You know, like you said, we kind of have a different version of the five aces. I'd probably take the 2010 version of the five aces over this team,
Yeah,
but
me too.
these guys are good. You know, we've got 5 really good pitchers, and then you got Painter, coming up mid-season. I mean, that's going to be really, really hard to match for the Phillies. Max Kepler again. Now we're dipping into the lukewarm moves. You know, he's a solid ball player. He's a very good defensive corner outfielder, but he hasn't really played much left field, which is where he's going to play for the Phillies. And to me, he's almost a clone of Brandon Marsh, or in a lot of ways. So he's a left-handed bat. He's better against left-handed pitching, but he's not fantastic. You know, he's kind of league average left-handed pitching. He's good defensively. He's older. It's a one year deal. I think I've said this before. There's no such thing as a bad 1 year deal. So I think it's a fine signing. I think it's better than running Wilson out there or Clemens or anybody else that, would have been a third or fourth outfielder on last year's team.
Yeah,
but
real fast on that. Thinking about that, I agree with you. And I think one of the biggest issues was I think we were so excited. Like you just opened up and you talked about adding the minority investors, right? Bringing these other people in, bringing this extra revenue in. And it kind of got us excited. Like, are we going to go Juan Soto? And for the record, I'm glad we didn't sign him. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not like the negative energy I feel of Juan Soto, but we'll get to that another day. And I think that's why this signing for Max Kepler, who I actually really like as a ball player. I think he's a grinder. Like you said it, he's a better player than Brandon Marsh. But the problem is it's not that shiny toy that we expected, and it's not a given, right? I mean, the problem about him, Jim, the way I say it, before we get to the question again, we're talking about man Jimmy Mack right here, the guy that talks all Phillies and breaks it down right here for the Tony Cotillo Show. I look at Kepler and say, like you said, he's a good player, but is the good player going to be enough?
Yeah, and I think in the regular season it'll be fine. Like it's like, is he going to put you over the top in the playoffs? That's what worries me. It's like this team is without, unless there's catastrophic injuries, this team is making the playoffs. So what are we going to do though to make sure that October isn't as disappointing as it was last year?
And that's my fear. I will say this, just tease on this a little bit to everybody checking in. If you're checking in right now, we're live right here on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, on X. If you want any questions, get them in. If it's good, I will 100% make sure that we ask these questions. But let me ask you this, Jim. Looking at the pitching aspect, well, we came in and again, I did not expect Jesus Luzardo to be a Philadelphia Philly. I'm a big Luzardo guy. I love everything about him. I know he's coming off injury, but man, when he's healthy, he's pretty goddamn dominant. And to think that is our rotation, number one, were you shocked when that move came about? And number two, looking around baseball, I mean, I said top 5, but I think this could essentially be the best rotation in baseball if everybody's healthy. What do you think?
So I agree. First of all, like you, I love Luzardo. His stuff is filthy. He's got a great fastball. Now, with the injuries last year, it dropped about a mile and a half per hour from 2023, where he was good in the plate. He made 32 starts. And it was more hittable. So I think his four-seamer, I think the batting average against was around 280 last year, pretty high. But his average fastball velocity was, I think, 95.2. And then if you go back to 2023, he his 96.7 on average. His batting average against was, I think, 232. So if that's who we're getting, if we're getting the fully healthy Luzardo, then I think he's going to be a beast. And I think he's really, people are talking about him being the 5. I think he's going to be the 3. I mean, he's better than Ranger, and he's better than Sanchez when he's healthy. And his slider and changeup are great. I mean, his whiff rate on both of those pitches is over 40%, which is sick.
I mean, this is a guy who, if you were looking for, you just said number 3, if you're looking for a third starter, even essentially some of the teams of Major League Baseball, if you're looking for a number 2 starter, right? You'd be extremely happy to get this guy, right? So, I mean, but look, at the end of the day, we're looking at this roster and this pitching staff is saying, okay, I look at it this way. You have obviously Zach Wheeler, who the guy just is a machine, right? But you just never know, right? It's this, I'm not to say he's going to break down, but injuries happen, things happen, right? The Elston's happen. Aaron Nola the same way. I think though, here's my take on this, Jim, and see if you agree with this, because we essentially had talked about this before. And what if they went in and said, you know what? Look, we wanted this guy, It wasn't available. It didn't happen. So we did the next best thing. Let's beef up the pitching staff. And then towards the trade deadline, if everything looks good, that's when you trade Ranger Suarez and you get that big bat. So now you was, because you saw Ranger Suarez hired Scott Boras, right? So he's already ready. He's gearing up for that big payday. So I think that could be the way, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think Suarez, and I think that Marsh may be available at the trade deadline, assuming Kepler is healthy and doing what we hope he does, and Crawford comes up. Because at that point, you've got 4 starting outfielders. And then, Rojas. And if between Marsh and Rojas would have a limited trade value. And, he's very affordable and controllable for 5 more years. Whereas Marsh only he'd have 2.5 years of control left at the trade deadline. Still a good value and a good, solid baseball player. You know, he just doesn't hit lefties well. That's one weakness. But if you're going to be a platoon player, this being the strong side of the platoon player is valuable.
Yes, 100%, 100%. So again, talking Phillies quiet off season is pitching enough right here on the Tony Cotillo show. My man Jimmy Mack, our guy right here that breaks it all down. The dude does so much work behind the scenes when he breaks out all these analytics. I mean, you heard him every Monday at Pikes Club, and you're going to hear him a lot more right here on the Tony Cotillo show. And looking at the pitches, let's get back to, because the first two moves that come down. Number one, the first one was the closer move, right? We thought about, are we bringing Estevez back? What are we doing with the closer role? Is it going to be Hoffman? Listen, both of those guys still sitting out there, right? And I'm going to get to Hoffman in a minute because I think he's overshooting his value a little bit. But that's another discussion. But Jordan Romano, who again for the Blue Jays closer, decent. I don't think he's blows you away by any means, but I think he has enough, and I think this shows us, in my opinion, that they're not ready to invest big time money into a closer, because I still think they feel Kerkering could be that guy. I'm not saying this year, but I do think they feel like they have it already. They just have to keep working on him. I don't know how you feel, but what can you tell us about Romano as far as his closing ability now that he's switching legs and coming over here to the Phillies?
Sure. So I think when he's healthy, he's a very good closer. He's not top tier. He's not Josh Hader in his heyday, not Edwin Diaz in his heyday. He's a step below that, but very effective. So I feel as long as he's healthy, he can be our closer this year. Is he going to be perfect? No. He'll, like I said, he'll be one step below the top tier closers. Like you mentioned, I'd love to see them make one more move. If we ended the offseason today, I'd be disappointed, because I do think there's a hole in the bullpen. And, like you mentioned, there's Hoffman, there's Estevez still out there. I did hear some rumblings that maybe the Phillies are kicking the tires on Estevez again. He wouldn't be my first choice of who's still available. But, again, Tanner Scott's still out there. I love Tanner Scott.
I know. I was going to say, your boy's still sitting out there, man.
Yeah. Yep. And now I heard something over the weekend, thinking that maybe the delay means Scott only gets 3 years, which again to me just makes him more attractive. So for me, Scott is head and shoulders above anybody else who's still available in the bullpen, and I do think the Phillies need to bring in one more reliever. If they think they're set, I think they're wrong. I think we'll have a weaker pen than some of the other teams we're going to face in October. And again, I'm looking at October. I don't care about April through September, because I think they're going to be fine in the regular season. But in October, you're going to need that high octane, top tier closer, just to make sure that the other team doesn't feel like they have any shot in the ninth inning, down a run or two. You again with an Estevez, you didn't have that feeling. You thought, hey, we can hit this guy.
Yep. And we listen, we've already done April and May. That's the thing I tell her about. We've already been there, man. This is about October, right? This is about October. I will say this, and I agree with you about Estevez. He didn't really give me that. I expected more. I don't know. Maybe it was me. I just feel like a guy with his size. I would look at guys like a Kelly Jansen pitching and all right, that dude gave me that feeling like he's going to dominate. This guy really never gave that to me. I don't know what it was, but speaking of Hoffman, man, I think this is a very interesting dynamic. A guy that has a fantastic story that, gets out of baseball, goes over to Japan, the Phillies take a shot on, comes over. And listen, I'm not saying he should be loyal to the Phillies or anything like that, but I really feel like this is the case again where the agent is overplaying the card a little bit. And, you heard all the rumblings about, well, maybe he could be a starter. Maybe he could be a swing guy, because why they're saying that, so they can elevate his value, make him more attractive, right? And I think that the Phillies, me and you talked about this, I think psychologically the Phillies looked, and like you just said, they want somebody that they can feel comfortable in the eighth and ninth. I think they did, but I think they saw him break down mentally in the playoffs, and I think it scares him a little bit. I think it's a little hesitant to say, was the stage too big for him? And now all of a sudden, is he getting a little too big for himself while he's out there? Maybe we don't want any part of this. And I feel bad because I like the guy. I think he was a dog. I think he had that mentality. But Jim, I just don't think this ends well for Hoffman, in my opinion.
So I think you might be right. So I heard at the beginning of the postseason or the offseason that he was looking for like 448, which again is about in line with the other guys who came from the pen and tried starters like Jordan Hicks out in San Francisco. That's very similar to his deal. And the Clay Holmes was signed to do the same thing with the Mets, so he got 3 and 38. And what I heard over the last maybe week and a half is that maybe Hoffman has lowered his sights to something similar to Holmes. But even so, what might be working against Hoffman is the fact that he was a starter before. When he went to when in Colorado and before he went to Japan,
I forgot about that.
He was a starter before. He was not successful. Now, how many starters are successful in Colorado? But there is a track record of him as a starter, and I wonder if teams are like, does he have the arsenal? Does he have 3+ pitches where we're going to be comfortable giving him 3 or 4 years, 12, 13 million a pop? And I think that may be where the problem lies. Why he's not signed. I kind of hope he's one of those guys that maybe we go on another 3 weeks, he's not signed, and maybe comes back to Philly for a little bit less than he's looking for now. Because again, he would be an arm I'd look for.
Exactly.
Especially you mentioned Kirkland before. I do not think Kirkland is ready for prime time. I think there's two. So I'm not saying he can't be.
Right.
But in the future, I do not want to have to trust him in the 8th or 9th inning next year because of 2 reasons. So one, he's way too dependent on his slider or his sweeper or whatever he calls it.
Yep.
It's a good pitch. It's a really good pitch. But when you have a closer, like his slider is more of a strike pitch. It's not he does not have a wipeout slider, and you really need that. You need a pitch that's going to start in the zone and end up in the dirt and make batters flail at it. If you're going to start a ball at the, maybe mid zone and drop it to the bottom of the zone, major league hitters are going to hit that.
It's got to be Brad Lidge like, man.
Yeah, it true, and he's not. Lidge, when he had his fastball, that's when he was 48 or 48. Liz, when he lost his fastball like a year or 2 later, he still had the slider, but that's all he had, and he was getting tattooed because the batters were just waiting for it. And that's Kirkering. The same thing happens to him sometimes. He's too in love with the slider. It can't be as more than 50% of the pitches like he is now, without 2 things. One, being more confident in his fastball and being able to locate it better for strikes, so he doesn't have to rely on the slider for strikes. And then 2, I think he needs to develop a variation of that current slider that becomes a wipeout slider and becomes an out pitch for him. So the batter's up there thinking, am I getting the strike slider or am I getting the wipeout slider? And not knowing. So I definitely think Kirkering can be a closer and maybe even a really dominant closer, but I think he needs to, they talk about reshaping your pitches now. It's a big term in the industry. I think he's one of those guys that needs to reshape a pitch, keep the pitch, keep the slider he has now, but then also create a variation of it where it's going to deceive batters even more.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Like, again, he's young. Obviously they're going to work on it. And I think that's why, like I was saying, they're not ready to go all in on him yet. And I think they're really not ready to invest in the guy. I mean, listen, 4 years for Hoffman, that's a long contract, right? They're already they're getting stonewalled with the Taiwan Walker contract. They don't want to get into another contract like that, right? I agree. But let's get it again. The Tony Cotillo Show right here, breaking things down, all things Phillies with my man Jimmy Mack. Make sure you're following Tony Cotillo Show on all social formats. Like, subscribe. You're watching on YouTube as always. Jim, two more, man. Number one, I'll save the best for last, but number one, the Bryce Harper effect. It came out. We were talking off air. I was reading some things. I forget who early reported it. Could have been on The Athletic. Could have been like Todd Zalecki. I'm not sure. But the question was asked about the lineup, and something was mentioned that I never even thought of. I never ever entertained. And this quote from Rob Thompson saying he's thinking about it, and that's batting Bryce Harper at leadoff. Now, I got into a big discussion at the barbershop. Shout out to my man Adam. I'm finally reunited with my barber. I love it. Man, he's the best dude in the world. And got all my grays, hiding them up a little bit. I had to shape up a little bit. But, we were talking about today. And, talking about how they have to adjust the lineup. And his thing was, well, what's the difference? I don't understand. Like, if Kyle Schwarber, he was productive, whether he's at 1 or 4. I'm like, no, but you have to understand it's a different approach, right? Their batting style completely changes. And I think last year, one of our biggest issues were the guys that are supposed to make contact and be table setters just didn't work, right? Stott had a bad year. Turner had a bad year, right? The power guys are always going to be the power guys. They're always going to swing and miss. They're always going to chase. And it was just highlighted because the guys that weren't supposed to were doing that. That being said, Jim, Bryce Harper, leadoff. Is it do you really think this is something that can happen? And if it could, do you think it works?
So the second question, that's going to be an interesting one. But well, I think it can happen. Absolutely. There's a definite shift over the past 20 years in baseball. As analytics got more and more ingrained into every team's thought processes, that batting your best players first, second, third, and fourth is better than your top guy being a punch and Judy guy who just gets on base and steals bases, and your second guy being a good contact hitter who could also bunt to move him over, and then your best hitter's third and your power hitter's fourth. It's now, like, I believe over the course of a season, the difference in at bats or plate appearances, let's put it that way, between batting first or batting fourth is about 80.
Wow.
So there's a pretty good argument to say, hey, getting Bryce Harper 80 more plate appearances is worth every penny. And again, he's not a base stealer. So people, there's still going to be people who complain, I'm sure that but you look at it as like, hey, he's a great on base guy. And you want your leadoff hitter on base. You want him to make the pitchers, have to work. So, if you had him first, Turner second, it's like, who do you bat third now? It's
I know.
Because
it's
Nick,
a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think it's Schwarber. I think Schwarber's fourth and Nick's fifth. I don't know who I want to put third necessarily. That's where it gets hard. If we had signed a big bat,
yes,
in the offseason, again, if we get good Kepler, maybe Kepler's third.
Yeah,
he's not. He's a good hitter when he's healthy. He wasn't really healthy last year.
No,
but he's put up big numbers in the past. He has a 36 homer season on his resume, and that's not not many players can say that.
You're right. And
so
I think. I'd say real fast. Yeah. I think that's one of those moves, Jim, that you have to trust the intuition of a Hall of Fame general manager. Yep. In Dave Dombrowski. Like I only say that because when he brought Castellanos over here, a lot of people were like, no, he knew, Nick is this kind of guy, and I think, listen, Dombrowski, he's earned this. Dombrow's earned the mulligan, in my opinion. People might like he's earned it because 9 times out of 10, I mean, we watched it with Pat Gillick, an old baseball guy would bring guys in, and Jason Worth, right? A guy like I'm going to take a shot on it because my intuition says this guy is going to this is going to click. I mean, so I not to cut you off, but I would just say that I'm going to trust Dombrowski with this move because I don't think you can really lose a lot with this move. I think you can only gain more than you're going to lose.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Dodgers just won a World Series with Mookie Betts batting first. Most of and I'll take that.
100%, man. 100. I mean, I agree, but you had a good point where it says, because that's kind of like what came up today. It's like, oh, what's the rest of the shift of the lineup? Like, who is batting third? Who's batting fifth? We could get on a whole tangent about the decline of JT Realmuto and stuff like that. But let's end with this, and this is going to be a hard question. And I brought this up today at the barbershop. And a lot of stuff comes to the barbershop, man. Barbershop talk is very underrated, man. It's very underrated. I'm a little concerned. And I'm a little concerned that our window is shut. And I look at, obviously I still think we have a top 5, pitching staff complete all the way around in baseball. I get it. But teams are getting younger and teams are getting better. And we're not getting younger and we're just getting older and we're starting to break down. And I just keep feeling like, I hate to bring them up. It's kind of like when the Sixers had Jimmy Butler and we had that year and it was like, this is the year. Like the window is there. This is the year. And they couldn't do it. And I almost feel like, Jim, like 2022, that run, it was all set up for them. And then, they go back to, you're only going to hold the Braves down for so long, man. Like, this isn't the 90s. Where we're going to win like 13 straight pennants. Like, that's not going to happen. It just scares me. Are my concerns valid to you to think that the window, I wouldn't say is completely shut, but it's definitely not open like it used to be?
So I agree. The window is not wide open anymore. In 2022, we ripped it open.
Yeah.
It was painted shut and we ripped it open. I don't know that was the best chance to win. I actually would argue that 2023 was the much better chance to win.
Arizona
we
year.
had Arizona. We could have beaten Texas in the World Series. So that is to me, that's the missed opportunity. That's where the 2023 Phillies missed. It's where the 2008 Phillies won. Because, the 2008 Phillies was not the best Phillies team.
No.
It was just the best chance to win.
Yeah,
the other teams that lined
Tampa,
up went wrong. Exactly.
Yep. The path was there.
Exactly. In 2023, the same situation occurred, and unfortunately, Arizona played out of their minds. A couple games and got the Phillies chasing, and they won and tipped their hats to them. But they weren't the better team. This year, the Dodgers were better than the Phillies. You just couldn't, especially the way the Phillies played in the second half of the year, and the way the Dodgers came back in the second half of the year once more guys were healthy. That Dodgers team's better. That Dodgers team has now gotten even better than last year's team.
It's crazy.
And the Phillies are, I would say the Phillies are better because I think Luzardo is, the other stat I didn't bring up earlier when I talked about Luzardo is the Phillies starting pitchers made 39 starts by guys not in the top 4. So not Wheeler, not Nola, not Sanchez, and not Suarez. And those 39 starts, the ERA of those guys was over 6. So by bringing in Luzardo, bringing in Luzardo, bringing in a painter midseason, even if he's only going to pitch 80 innings or so. This pitching staff's already way better than it was last year. But the lineup is mostly the same. I mean, you can say that it's improved in center field if Marsh gets most of the starts and Rojas only plays against lefties. So you can make an argument that it's better. It's marginally better.
Right.
What you really got to hope for is that Stott, if Stott had elbow issues as they're claiming now, that whatever the issue was, because they haven't said what it was, and he hasn't had surgery. So, if it was whatever the issue was, was it just tendonitis? Was it just something that where rest, maybe some anti-inflammatories take care of it? But you need Stott to bounce back. If he can be the 2023 player and he hits 280 and gives tough at bat again, that's a big plus. JT, can he stay healthy? Maybe they play him less often. Maybe he gets two days off a week now, but it keeps him fresh.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then again, JT's, his bat's never a question. It's always the nagging injuries or the injuries that completely take him out.
Yep.
So, I'm not counting him out, but that Dodgers team has improved so much after they were already a great team that, the Phillies can beat them if they match up head to head, but nobody's going to make them a favorite.
No, that those days are over, man, and that's the thing. Now they're going to have to fight. Like they're going to have to fight, and I just don't know how much fight they have left in them at this point at a lot of these stages of their career. So it's going to be interesting. All right, man, I'll check it. It says disappointed about Kepler doesn't solve the problem. Need a legit center fielder. We kind of touched on that, Throttle, but I'll let Jim reiterate. But Jim has, look, Jim mentioned. I mean, what he had Jim, a 36 home run season.
Yeah, but you have to go back about 5 or 6 years for that.
But it happened.
Yes, exactly. He's capable. Right. He's got that on his resume. It's not fake. Now, I think the legit center fielder comes when Crawford gets promoted. They weren't going to address center field in the offseason because they know Crawford's close.
That's a good point.
So I think Marsh and Rojas will, they'll platoon where Marsh plays most of the games until Crawford's ready. And then if Crawford's ready before the trade deadline, which I would expect, then maybe Marsh is offered because then he's just an extra piece. And I don't think that's going to make anybody happy. He's used to playing all the time and being a fourth outfielder when one of the guys you might be able to spell is the same guy as you in Kepler. And Kepler's not a center fielder. So I want to make sure Throttle didn't think he's a center fielder. He's not. He's really a right fielder that we think will be a fine left fielder because it's an easier position to play. Yep. And he's a very good defensive outfielder. So it should, there shouldn't be any drop off from where Marsh took over in left field last year, played excellent defense. So we should still get the excellent defense. We should get a better bat all around, especially against lefties. And, Marsh can improve the center field offensive production until Crawford's ready to come up.
I like that. And I think, like we're talking about, when you're running a franchise that has some younger talent, you obviously have to foresee this, right? You can't pay everybody. That's one thing that, we got spoiled for a while, right? We were just paying everybody. And we can't pay everybody. Eventually we have to have contributions, from other people. I do think that, this is going to be the make or break year to find out that, is that Trey Turner contract. That's another thing. We'll end on this. I want to talk about Trey Turner for 1 second, because I kind of feel like, hey, tell me if you think I'm wrong. This is my own gut feel, my own intuition that, I don't think Dombrowski wanted to sign Trey Turner. And I think that he kind of got nudged into it by Harper a little bit and by Middleton, right? And I think that because it didn't work out the way he thought, I think honestly the way he knew, I think he's been hesitant to spend that kind of money on another player. I honestly gotta think if they don't sign Trey Turner, that even though I don't want him here, I think Juan Soto is probably here this year. Just my own opinion. I just think they said, even though they have the money, we're not going down that road. We're not going down the road again. And I think that's going to be the end all. This is going to be the year, Jim, in my opinion. Like, is he going to fulfill that contract, man? I mean, that's just the way I feel. What do you think?
So I never thought of that before. Like, was potentially, was that a Middleton deal,
I
not
think it
a
was.
Dombrowski deal? It could very well be.
Again,
And
this is just no sources.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Jim Salisbury. He'll be like Todd's. This is just my own gut. It's just what I feel. That's all.
Yep. So here's the thing. I still like Turner. Again, I don't love the signing because for two reasons. One, it hasn't worked out fantastically yet, but he is a premier talent. He's not a very good defensive player, but we kind of knew that before. We were bringing him in for his legs and his bat. So I wasn't a fan of the deal for two reasons. I said one of them is it's not going to end well.
No,
he's a little guy. Speed is half of his game, and when he's 37, 38, 39, 40, that game, that part of the game is not going to be there anymore.
No.
So, so it really then just becomes the bat. Can he get, and if you look at his stats, they weren't terrible last year. He had 295. He had 20 plus home runs, even though he missed, a couple of weeks with the hamstring. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, highest AAV in the lineup good either.
Right. It's not what we expected.
Yeah, exactly. So, if he could come back this year, come back healthy, no hammy tweaks, so he can still steal bases, hit 25 plus home runs like he did once before. If he could, sit there and say, hey, I need a little more pop to make up for the fact that I'm, on the other side of 30 now. If he can just be a run producer, score 100 plus. And again, assuming he stays in the 2 hole, even if Harper's number 1, having Harper on base in front of him should give him more opportunities for RBIs. So, I definitely want to see a bounce back from him. Really, Stott, Turner, and JT are the 3 guys that have to come back strong this year if we're really going to make another run in October. Again, I think we're fine through September.
I agree. I do. There 3 big pieces to this lineup that were very, very underproductive last year. And again, I'll say this about Trey Turner: he's just not a Philly guy. Like I think all production aside, stats aside. The reason why, not only obviously because it's production, but we all fall in love with Bryce Harper, and we all like. Well, I wouldn't say all, but I know I do. But a lot of people like Nick Castellanos. A lot of people these are Philly guys, right? They're gritty, they're grimy, dude. Like Trey Turner's a little soft. Like he's not. He is not a Philly guy, and I think some of his answers. And again, this is an indirect shot at him because it's just how he's built, right? And I think when they ask him questions, he gives you that attitude like, yeah, well, whatever. Like, I'm just going to do what I do and it's going to work, right? But that's how he's always been, where, you hear Bryce like, no, man, I'm going to get after it. I'm going to do this. You're not Philly. You're not going to hear that from Trey. Like, that's not him. And I think, Jim, that big disconnect between, what we perceive him to be based on what he actually is, I think honestly could be the biggest stumbling block of why we don't like Trey Turner.
It could very well. Maybe his wife needs to rub off on him. His wife's a Philly area girl.
Exactly.
Maybe she needs to toughen him up a little bit in the off season. Have him game ready come April.
Yeah, man. Well, one thing's for sure, he's going to have to be game ready, man. He 100% is going to have to be game ready. Man, this was great. Again, Tony Cotillo Show. My man, Jimmy Mack, checking in. We're going to do this a little more often. Obviously, listen, remote shows, we'll see how they go. Looks like we're going to be doing a little more of this in the coming weeks, which is fine. Just let everybody know that it looks like Monday and Thursdays are going to be the live nights for the Tony Cotillo Show. And then we got a big announcement coming up in a couple weeks to where It looks like I'm going to join forces with a formidable foe of mine. Go back and forth, and instead of doing the Tony Cotillo show for 3 nights, it's going to be Tony Cotillo show 2 nights and a specific show between me and this guy. I think you all are going to like. I think it's going to be pretty good, man. It's going to be fun, and as always, everybody for the love and support, I greatly appreciate it. We are. I want to say this before I go. And Jim knows, he's been following me for a long time. Everybody following know what I am. I just want to let everybody know, if you have a YouTube channel and you're getting, you're getting disgusted, if you're down because it's not growing, I don't listen, man. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I went on this venture in December and decided to start from ground up. I don't pay for subscribers. I don't pay for views. All I do is work consistently every day trying to figure out the best content, the best times to post, the best tags. I will tell you, it works. I'm telling you. Just go to the Tony Cotillo page. I went viral on one post, and it was on Baker Mayfield. Okay, right now, and it's a 2-minute and 15-second post. Okay, but it hit all the right channels. It's up to almost 10,000 views. It has 100, and again, the comments 192 comments. Like, it went viral. Like, what I'm telling you is, I only have 375 subscribers. You don't need 1 million subscribers to grow. You just need to be consistent. So I know my boy E's checking in. I know he's been the Unscripted Sports Show. He's been frustrated. My man Fuji's been frustrated. But fellas, I'm just going to tell you, it's consistency. You can't just show up and talk once a month. You can't, like, I'm just being honest with you. You get at it every day. Find those times. It can work. If you need any help, let me know. As always, the Tony Cotillo Show. My man Jimmy Mack, I want to thank him for joining me straight from the house, straight from, I would say dungeon, man, but like, he's always in the war room. We're going to call it the Jimmy's War Room. That's Jimmy's War Room, where he breaks down all the percentages for us. He gave us some really good stats, so make sure you go back and look from the beginning. It'll be in the playlist for the exclusive interviews. But as always, man, everybody stay safe and stay healthy. Continue to do one. I said I'm going to say this again. One good thing, man. One good thing. Okay, if we all could do one positive thing every day for somebody else, man, this world could be a better place. And shout out to all the people going through the wildfires over there in California. I mean, it is horrific. I'm a very emotional person. I've watched on Twitter. I follow the Raw Alerts channel, and I'm watching these videos. I literally want to cry. Like, I could not imagine being stuck in a house and watching these fireballs in my back. It's excruciating. I don't care if people think those people got money. It doesn't matter. They're human beings, man, and it's a shame of what's going on. So shout out and prayers go out to everybody out there, their thoughts and their family. But as always, we'll catch you back here next time talking. I don't know, might be Birds, it could be National, could be more Phillies. Who knows? Maybe the Phillies make another move and we got to get Jimmy on here breaking news. I don't know, but we'll be back real soon. Everybody stay healthy. We'll catch you back here next time.